Shanti ma'am? Shanti ma'am, can you hear me? Not audible, na? Okay. Hello. Hello. Shanti ma'am, am I audible now? Audible. Okay, clear. Okay, fine. Thank you. You want me to talk louder? Is this clear now? Is it okay now? Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Dr. Abraham. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you, sir?
Good, good. Oh, you're in your college?
Yes, sir.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
So things have opened up. Very good.
Yeah. We are having online classes.
Ah.
Nice to meet
Yes.
you again. Yeah. Let's begin, sir.
Yes,
Yeah.
sure.
Once again, a warm good morning to everyone and welcome to the session with Mahesh Dattani, sir. First of all, with immense joy and gratitude, I welcome Dattani, sir, to this huge virtual gathering. Thank you, sir, for making it possible a second time as the continuation of the session we already had on March 17th this year. Now, this is a converging point of faculty members, research scholars, students from all the states in India, from Kerala to Kashmir, and even a few countries abroad. I extend a warm welcome to all of you to this session, along with my colleagues at the Department of English, Mr. Jayanti College, Bangalore. Now, if we have more than 1,600 external registered participants, it's because Dattani sir is known to them through his plays and his movies and so on, a versatile personality. Therefore, an introduction to Dattani sir would be irrelevant. However, I thought I must share what struck me about him, having known him for a couple of times now. I was going through his article titled Lessons from Kuriyatam in the Hindu Business Line, dated 6th June 2021, wherein he describes his experiences and lessons from an online course which he attended, titled Navarasa Sadhana by Guru Venuji. And I would like to draw your attention to the concluding remarks Sir makes. And I quote, sir, this short workshop raised some fundamental questions for me. Here I am practicing a certain kind of cantonment theatre with very impoverished roots, and a treasure trove of artistic antiquity and wisdom lays open before me. Urban theatre artists like me must learn to exploit the riches lying in our own ancestral backyard. Unquote. This is the greatness of the Palliser. The more learned and experienced he is, the humbler he becomes. His creative mind keeps seeking and exploring with the disposition of a true disciple, a shishya, to learn all the time. He has taken keen interest to make this a learning experience for all of us. He would be sharing with us a preamble on how a play is analyzed at rehearsals, taking into consideration the number of questions the research scholars asked about these plays. Then he would be responding to the questions that you all have already sent. With a great sense of pride and gratitude, I welcome you, sir, to take over the session.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Abraham, for that wonderful introduction. And I must say, I also want to thank you for curating the questions, because I believe Dr. Abraham received over 300 questions, and she was kind enough to sift through them and sent me about 30. Even that may be a little too much for me to respond to in detail. The kind of detail each question deserves in the short time we have. But I would like to begin by saying, first of all, thank you for being there. And I completely agree with Dr. Abraham that I would like this to be an exchange, because we are, we're all in the process of learning. And for too long, at least in my opinion, correct me if I'm wrong, that, you know, practitioners, especially artists, theater practitioners, we work exclusive from the academia. And academia, I think, also works a little more exclusively from theater practitioners. So it brings me to the fundamental question as to what are the aesthetics of critiquing a text that is meant for performance. Now, I'm sure, you know, this is common ground when I say that A play is written for it to be performed and not read. Primarily, that's the intention of writing a play. So does that mean a play can't be studied in a classroom, as so many of you are doing? Of course it can, but I think the aesthetics, if I may use the word a little loosely, for studying a play in a classroom is fundamentally different to the one studying maybe a novel or an essay or a poem. I'm sure there are common grounds, but there are huge differences as well. And I love the questions that came to me, and some of them were leaning more to the sociology of my writing. What is the social context? That seemed to be the dominant concern, and understandably so, because I do choose subjects that are socially unique, to use a word, that these are areas of society which have yet to find its place in the sun. So I guess that is to be expected. But I wish, before I address some of the questions, unfortunately, I can't address all of them. I would like to share the practitioner's aesthetics of, first of all, analyzing a text. So I speak as a director because I have directed plays apart from my own. And, earlier I used to direct the first production of the plays that I'd written. Now, this may not be something very new to you, but I will still go through them. And I have taken them mostly from Stanislavski's approach to script analysis. But as I read it, you will surely see that there are resonances from the Natyashastra, and definitely a lot from the Poetics of Aristotle. And at this point, I would also like to say that whether it's Bharata or Aristotle or, Abhinav Gupta or Bhattalola, whoever, that they were primarily scholars. They were not practitioners. And why this is so valuable to us today is that their scholarly treatises came from a study, a very deep study of the theater that was practiced in their time. So I think you as academics serve a huge purpose if you study the practice of theater as it is today, because things have changed. And at the same time, some of the classic tenets or principles, if I may use that word, not tenets, haven't changed at all. If you look at, the Ashtasthai Bhava, if you look at the Ashtarasa or the Navarasa, or if you look at transitory moods, the Vyabhichari Bhava, or if you look at the Vibhava, the concomitants, and if you look at the Western approach of given circumstances, action, and what is at stake, how different are these classical treatises? There's something very magical and miraculous in the way they all converge in many ways. And but I think that theater, as an art, like all art forms, is in a transitory stage. And I think it is time that we also apply new approaches, maybe to understand and formulate the poetics of contemporary theater worldwide. But I guess we are, theater is so much about the here and now of our time and place. So I think it would be fair to say that it's hugely important that we prepare these aesthetics from an Indian perspective. Of course, India is such a loose term. I mean, if you look at theater in Kerala, if you look at theater in Bengal, if you look at theater in Maharashtra, folk forms, classical forms, or even contemporary theater in some ways, they're so different. So okay, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, sorry, I got muted for a while. So I think that because we have such a paucity of new works emerging in the theater in such a huge country, we're looking at a population of 1.25, 1.5 billion. And if you look at the playwrights, if you look at the theater companies, they are like, we're looking at less than 1,000, maybe, I don't know. I haven't even made put a number to it. And I think, so given that fact, and also the fact is that even the Sanskrit theater that is studied in relation to the Natya Shastra or the, Dvanyaloka, the classic critiques of theater, we have so few examples because of lack of documentation. I guess so many of those plays didn't survive. Again, you're looking at 6 or 7 playwrights that we could study in a classical sense. And even if you look at Western theater, the poetics of Aristotle haven't survived, not all of it. There were lectures he gave, and a diligent student noted them down. And we only have his poetics on tragedy. I'm sure he wrote poetics on comedy as well, and satire plays, but we don't have anything. So the poetics we're working on, that we understand, that's just a fraction. This is just to impress upon you how important a role that you as academic scholars studying theater, literature, I know it is coming under the umbrella of literature, and I have problems with that too, but I think that's for a separate discussion. I think it's hugely important that you form your own aesthetics, because quite a few of the questions, and understandably so, were about exploring the poetics of my own writing, which is, I am still productive as a creative person. I'm still writing, and that really isn't my focus. So if you ask me, what is the relevance of this in today's society? I really don't have an answer to that, because I look to academics and theater critics and audiences to answer those questions. But having said that, let me just run through the kind of planes of script analysis that Stanislavski proposed, and it's followed even today. So maybe there is some merit to looking at it from empirical knowledge. From my experiences, I can tell you they're invaluable. Maybe it is because of the kind of theater I do. I don't know, but feel free to accept or reject them. But I think based on the questions, I think it is worth spending some time to go through these planes, as he calls them. Is that if at rehearsals, when you have a text, there are actors, there are designers, there's the director, and all of them need to analyze the script, honoring the direction in which the director wants to take them. So the first plane, of course, I'm not sure there is an order of importance. It's the plane that I've written, is the literary plane, right? Now, this is not the plane of critiquing you would use in literature, but because the text for performance comes to us in a form of literature, it could be called the literary plane. And within this plane, you could start with a meta text, and almost all the questions that I received were on the metatextual plane of the literary plane as to what were the playwright's intentions or what were the circumstances under which the playwright wrote the play. So coming to the first set of questions, I've clubbed them together because they were very similar. Most of them started with, what made you write Bravely Fought the Queen? Or what made you write 7 Steps Round the Fire? Or what makes you choose these themes, right? So I'm not sure I could give you a very clear answer on that. But I think, and also the other question, which is a part of the meta text, is that how personal are these stories? Are they autobiographical? There were quite a few questions on that. Now, in my opinion, because I can only speak from the way I approach things, and I know that there are some writers who do the same. I heard a lecture by the American playwright Paula Vogel, a Pulitzer Prize-winning writer. She has written plays like How I Learned to Drive and Baltimore Waltz. And since there were questions on feminism in writing, I think, I would encourage you to study her plays if you haven't already. And she said something similar, and I was very happy to hear that, is that it's not a question of the playwright writing himself into the story. Very often the process is about writing yourself out of the story. Now, as you know, all art is personal and sometimes it is private. So, but it can't stay on that plane. I think it's a great start that you start with a sense of ownership, that this is my story that I am telling. But I think in subsequent drafts, it's hugely important that you write yourself out of the story because in theater, ultimately what we're offering on stage are multiple perspectives. So you're looking at not just the author's voice, but you're also looking at the author's gaze. And I think it's a combination of the voice and the gaze, what the author personally wants to express and what the author sees around herself, around her, what are her concerns. And I think it is, all writing is probably a combination of both. So to answer that question as to what makes me write about these things, it really is to do with my gaze, and it is also to do with my voice. Because where does my gaze fall? It clearly is connected to something that I wish to say, isn't it? We're all very selective in what we perceive, what we observe, because the world is huge. And there's so much, and the idea of storytelling, I think, is to bring the world and its nature, its idiosyncrasies, everything, to a nugget which can be clearly understood because it has some kind of structure, some kind of definition. So that probably is the process. So maybe I could give you some examples of how writing yourself out of it works. I'll give you some examples of my own play. Well, let me start with this example because I use that a lot with my students, my drama students, is that Shakespeare had a son called Hamnet, whom he lost in the bubonic plague. And he lost a lot of people, family that were very close to him, his sisters, and I think his daughters. Well, I don't know, but many of his family members and people he was close to probably died in the plague that. And he wrote a play, Hamlet. Right now, what is interesting about Hamlet is It is not about a father grieving the loss of his son. The play is about a son grieving the loss of his father. And of course, the rest of it is all a great revenge. It's the greatest revenge drama ever written, as many people would say, because he's contemplating revenge throughout the play. And it's only towards the end that you have all those bodies falling on the floor. So as you could see, at some point, I have no idea, I'm just speculating that, the grief is very personal, sense of loss, but somewhere, he probably wrote himself out of it and created Hamlet. Now, coming to my own little endeavors, and it's nice to look at the great plays because, they immediately spark an interest. And then you look at something a little closer home, maybe something a little bit smaller. Dance Like a Man. Now, again, I've been asked so often that question, is it autobiographical? I would say, no, it isn't, because the story has nothing to do. My parents were probably very liberal-minded. They were traditional, but liberal-minded. I would say as a teenager, I want to learn dance. Oh, that's wonderful, my father would send his car and driver to drop me off at class. I want to do theater. Oh, that's wonderful. And, my father's office became a rehearsal room for me initially. So, but that's boring, right? So I sort of wrote Dance Like a Man because I was studying dance for 6 years. And there were some incidents. For example, there were just 2 male students in quite a largish class. And I was the oldest because I started very late. And that's the reason I never could become a dancer, because you have to start young and you're looking at least 15 years of training to be a good Bharatanatyam dancer. And I only survived 6 because my body was already set by the time I began to learn it. There was another male dancer, and he lived in the same area as I did at that time, JP Nagar. And I remember once going back because I offered to take him home, and he said something which of course I honored. He said, if you don't mind, please don't tell anyone in our area that I'm learning dance, right? I haven't told anyone. I haven't even told my parents. Now, that hit me like a bolt from the blue because I really didn't know why the secrecy about it. And then I came to know slowly how there is a stigma attached to dance. Earlier, it was the stigma was with women because it was seen as the dance of Devdasis who did not have a firm position in society. And so the association was made at a stigma for women. And I learned that through my gurus as to how difficult it was for them to learn. But this is something I learned hands-on about what it meant to be a male dancer, even in the late 80s and 90s. So I could only imagine what my gurus must have gone through in the 40s and 50s. And that's how Dance Like a Man came about. And, I sort of wrote myself out of the play. I really didn't want a character who seemed a little sort of, indignant about societal norms and, positions. And I did not want a character coming from a state of privilege, which, I clearly did. So I wrote myself out of it, not entirely because, well, maybe so, because I do have this character of Vishwas, who is a Marwadi boy. I'm Gujarati, I'm not Marwadi, who is completely, let's say, he's just not interested in dance. He's interested in Lata. He's in love with her. And we see the world of dance with all its sort of problems and beauty and romance and everything through the eyes of this very naive young man who comes to their home for the first time to propose, to meet Lata's parents first. So you could see how I sort of took myself out of it, again with 7 steps around the fire, because that's a question that came as well, as to why did I write it, or how did I write it, or what made me write it. These are all sort of meta-textual sort of speculations. I remember I was in Delhi in a park, and I was greeted by this very beautiful person who identified herself as transgender. Excuse me. And I'm not quite sure whether she was begging in the park, but she refused to sit down on the bench. And we had a chat, and she spoke the most beautiful Hindi. And she said that, it's that they usually stick together, because I said something stupid like, where are your friends? And she said that, yes, we usually stick together, but now I've sort of wandered off. And the reason why we stick together is because we gain strength there. And she went on to tell me about how they use vocal and physical energy with a clap to actually intimidate people, because that is their way of surviving in a world that is very hostile to them. So that was one of the beginning. But then, as you know, the play is a murder mystery. It's not really about transgender, but it is set in this fascinating world of transgender people. At the same time, I'd received a commission from BBC Radio 4, and Jeremy Mortimer, one of the producers at Radio 4, asked me, because I'd written a play, Do the Needful, for them to commemorate 50 years of Indian independence. And the 2 playwrights were asked to write for that 50th year in 97, were Girish Karnad and me. And Girish Karnad wrote the Dreams of Tipu Sultan, a fabulous radio play which is also being performed on stage. And I wrote a play called Do the Needful. And so they asked me again that they were interested in commissioning me and whether I had any ideas on what I wanted to do. And so I said, look, this is wonderful that, every country in the world has transgendered people, but we are very special because we have a cult. Not all transgendered Indians are hijras. The hijra is a very specific cult. They have a very clear system of lineage, like there is a guru, a devi, whom they, and the support structure, it is a family. So they make sisters, there's a sisterhood, a sorority amongst themselves, and maternity, that, the guru is a mother figure for them. So it's a very sort of very interesting subculture, which is very much like what artists do, is borrowing from mainstream culture, but creating it to make something else. Well, they were fascinated, but the first question he asked me was, how do middle-class English listeners, because that's the bulk of listeners that BBC radio drama has, how will they, understand this? And I was very clear, I did not want to spell things out and create a kind of expository storytelling thing just to explain the thing. And I thought, how about the format of a murder mystery? And immediately they stood up, because that is something middle-class English listeners, audiences are so used to, and they love a good murder mystery, whether it's, Agatha Christie, or whether, all her characters, I mean, like Jane Marple or Hercule Poirot, or even Sherlock Holmes. There's so many tropes, detective tropes that English audiences are very familiar with. And I thought, and immediately interest perked up, and they said, yes, this is worth pursuing. Please send us a concept note as soon as you can, and we'll be happy to commission you based on the concept, of course, because they have their own procedures. So ultimately, what the play is about, it's about man, woman, and transgender, or the binaries and the non-binary. So if you really take a script analysis of the play, the central character is Uma, who's also the detective. And it's her unique relationship with her husband, who is the source of the animus, the male energy, and the anima which he projects as this very cultured and conditioned woman in a privileged Indian society. And then you have the animus and anima that comes from the transgender, right? So it really is about first, second, and third gender and the power play between all three. So that might answer a whole load of questions that came about on that, right? So if you're looking at the literary play, meta text is just one aspect of it. And I've spent way too much time in talking about that. It's almost halfway into the talk. So the literary plane also has the text, right? Clearly, if you're looking at the more Sanskrit approach, you're looking at the Vakya and the Vyangya. I hope I pronounced them correctly. Text and subtext, the Dhvani, the suggested meaning of it. So you're looking at that. And when you're looking at the text, again, modern contemporary writing, playwriting may offer its challenges to academia, because you can't analyze the literature through rhyme schemes or meters as you would, let's say, Shakespeare, or if if you were looking at some of Tagore's work. Again, he wrote free verse, but Aurobindo comes to mind, although that's such a lovely literary piece and may not have the kind of dramatic potential that some of Tagore's plays had. So you're looking at that, but there are ways that even if it is not alliteration of rhyme schemes or meter, that you could appreciate the literary plane, the text on the literary plane. You could also look at prosody, which is a word I came to know about 5 or 6 years ago through a Western critic, is that you're looking at the musicality of prose text, which is the word where the word prosody probably comes as a mixture of prose and melody. So there is a music. And one of the things that in initial readings as a director, I would insist that the actors and the designers pay attention to the punctuations. Where are the commas? Where are the ellipses? And where are the exclamation marks? Because they definitely give you a sense of the rhythm of the character's speech and how that rhythm is broken. That definitely is part of the aesthetics of the literary plane. So there are ways which I would be happy to do a separate talk on each one of these points. And then, of course, you have the subtext, right? Now, coming back to the meta text, again, this is a question often asked is, where is the playwright in the play? Because what you're seeing are characters' perspectives. because as I said, it is about multiple perspectives. And there are different writers have said different things poetically, but the one that speaks to me most is that the playwright exists in the subtext, in what is not spoken. That I remember going to Japan on a Ford Japan Foundation program. And one of the theater companies there, actually a dance theater company, a Buto dance company, had offered to present my play Final Solutions as a kind of, as part of the gala, meet the writers. There were writers from all over Japan and India. It was a cross-cultural collaboration. And they did this wonderful presentation in Buto. As you know, Buto dance can be very internal, very intense, and there are bursts of physicality on stage. It's very, very powerful to watch if you haven't watched a Buto performance. It's completely sort of broken from No or Kabuki, and I think it's the counterculture of it that makes it interesting. Again, Japan has so much investment in the arts, and I really wish we could do that, because we have a treasure trove of forms that we could explore and bring into the contemporary world. And coming to my point about the subtext, none of the lines that I had written were there, not even in translation. In fact, it took me 10 minutes to realize that this was my play being performed. I thought this was like a curtain raiser, and the play will actually begin after that. And I only came to know after that, and during the question and answer session, which were being translated to me through the headphone, as to how much the audiences got out of my play without the words. They were talking about insider and outsider, and how it felt to be within people who saw you as outsiders, but you were actually in their midst, and all this. And it struck me that, yes, this is where I live. This is where I am. Because so the question you can ask when you read a play and when you want to get to the playwright is, if I were to remove all the words that are spoken in the text, what remains? That soul belongs to the playwright. Of course, there are different opinions as to, some people say that the playwright only exists while she's writing it, and once it gets into rehearsals, the playwright doesn't exist at all. And I think in literary circles as well, there's something similar, that the minute the novel becomes reader's material, the writer is dead, or the author is dead, or whatever. So subtext, very important. And now the next is hugely, hugely important on the list. What is the dramaturgy involved in this, right? How has it been structured? How is it received by the audience? How is it performed by the actors? What is the interpretation directors give to it? And I think it's very important for academia to have access to this. Fortunately, now we're in the digital medium, so even if you can't see it live, you can, retrieve it from archival sources. I think this is very important. And there was one particular question which I think addressed the dramaturgy in a way which was very interesting, because it's also connected to the physical, the spatial plane, which I will come to soon. And this was by Manisha Sinha from Noida. And she said, what is the symbolic significance of an offstage character in Bravely Fought the Queen? And in quotes, she quotes me, a shriveled old beggar woman. And in the play, if you've read it, this woman keeps getting thrown out by the watchman from one house, and she goes to the next. And both houses belong to two sisters who are married to two brothers. So it's a kind of family arrangement there, which is part of the story. And so she asked, what is the symbolic significance? Because Alka has a great animosity towards the beggar woman, whereas Dolly shows some sympathy. And to me, as I can tell you where it helps in the storytelling, is that she is in a way a representation of the despondency of the women in the characters, because the women of the play come from a very privileged position. So although they face oppression in many ways, they are able to manifest their, as the bhav, it's a wonderful, beautiful word, probably better than despondent, is nirved, which is quite, as you well know, it is one of the transitory, one of the vyabhichari bhavas. And I think that she represents the displacement in many ways. And I think there is a mirror of the matriarch, who's Ba, the mother, the men's mother, the mother-in-law, from the women's perspective, that if you look at the analysis, if you analyze it on a physical plane, the mother-in-law is placed on the highest level. And the beggar woman, in the way I've written it, you don't even see her. But there was a brilliant production in London by Michael Walling of Border Crossings. And I was there at rehearsals for his production. He did something beautiful once he understood the dramaturgy from my perspective, because I'm a living playwright. So that's the other thing, is that, you know, most of the plays that are being performed are by dead people. And well, I'll be there too, but hopefully not for long. Not for a while. He did something very brilliant, is that the way he set up the stage, the periphery of the stage was defined by sand. And there was a lot of litter in the sand, you know, cigarette packets and, you know, rotten vegetables and stuff. And Ba, that is the matriarch in the play, is demented. She's suffering dementia. It doesn't say what kind, but she keeps slipping into the past. She's had several strokes, so she is paralyzed. Now, very stylistically, in some of Ba's monologues, he actually had the actress move on the periphery and sift through almost like the sands of time. Because she keeps going, she's actually living in the past. And her movement sort of moved, and then she came to the lowest level and she became the beggar woman. I thought that was a brilliant directorial interpretation of the text. And I think that's one of the planes that Stanislavski mentions in great detail, is the physical plane. Sorry, it's something, I got a message. So I missed the word you used for despondency. Is it possible to know? Yes, it's nirveda, Nirveda. I'm sure it's a Sanskrit word, but it's used as, it's one of the top vyabhichari bhavas. And you know, when I joined the workshop by Guru Venuji, a lot of the exercises he did was on Nirved, because it is about when you feel completely insulted and humiliated, you know, what is the bhav, what is the rasa which comes out of that. And we went through several exercises. As part of the exercises, I sort of became a sweeper, and one of the things I did was actually pick up a rotten mango peel from the garbage, and actually enjoyed it because that would be my only access to such an expensive fruit. And believe me, it sort of evoked so many feelings, that I've never felt before in all my 60 years. That was a fabulous workshop, and thank you, Dr. Abraham, for bringing that up. But the word, I'm sure, is nirved, or as in South, if you're from the South, it would be nirveda. And maybe it's the Sanskrit word, maybe a little different, but basically I translate it as despondency. Maybe there's another word for it in English, but for me, this makes the most sense. So I hope, Manisha, that answered your wonderful question on the dramaturgy. And again, oh yes, there's another one on this, Sohini Naya, or Nair, I'm not too sure, a student from West Bengal. What does Kanhaiya signify in the play? Now, again, if you know the play, Kanhaiya, the beggar woman, and Praful are three very, very important characters who don't come on stage. You never see them, right? And as it turns out, as the play progresses, Kanhaiya is actually imaginary. The women made up this cook as a lover. And I guess it is the cultural sort of symbolism. It's a little heavy, I know. Is, of course, the name Kanhaiya, who is Krishna. And one of the attributes of Krishna is that, at least in my interpretation, is that when there is despondency in women, where there is unfulfilled love, even if they're married, I think that's the beauty of tradition, especially in Indian literature. It's so rich with transgressions. And Radha is such a beautiful example of transgressions. She's married. In some way, she's also related to Krishna, and she's older, right? And you have this very complex symbolic relationship between the two, which could be seen as spiritual, which it is spiritual, but at the same time, very sensory, very pleasing, and so very dramatic as well. And no wonder Kathak and Odyssey and even Bharatanatyam, they're full of textual analysis of meetings of Krishna and Radha. So I guess that is, in a sense, the significance of Kanhaiya, is that they are expressive about an imaginary love affair. Whereas if you look at Nitin, who's having this clandestine affair with a rickshaw driver, it's completely unexpressed. We only come to know what's happening through the action of the play. And he only tells Alka when she's too drunk to notice what he's saying. So in that sense, that also is a significance that there is a certain freedom in the imaginary plane, which the women enjoy, and that gives you a certain consequence of nirvana or despondency. Okay, so the next plane is the physical plane. I've already mentioned something about the physical plane. Now, more and more theater in the West, especially, it is almost the language of space and time being explored on stage. There's this whole thing that started as a dance kind of analysis of space and time, which then moved to theater, and it's called viewpoints, right? And of course, you have them in traditional theater as well. It's certainly in Koreatum, I was very pleased to know, and you're looking at thousands of years of tradition. And in viewpoints, the architecture of the space that you're performing in, the topography that you create, and I came to know viewpoints much later after I'd written this, but in a lot of my plays, the topography is very important. So I have split levels, and I sort of challenge the sort of classic designation that the people of the higher status, like kings and nobility, are on the higher level, and the subjects and the women are mostly on the lower level, except of course, maybe the queen, who's on a level second to the king. So I change that, and sometimes I give characters different levels. I use topography a little differently. I use it sometimes to sort of talk about past and present as well. So that plays in Bravely Fought the Queen. Again, as I mentioned, it plays a very, very important part. There are, I think, 7 or 8 viewpoints that also are connected with time, space, and time, because that is one thing that differentiates writing for performance from writing for the page, like a novel or a poem, is that writing for performance, the storytelling takes into account that ultimately the story will be told in the 3 dimensions of time, of space, and 1 dimension of time. So in a way, you are writing for 4 dimensions, 3 of space and 1 of time. And the viewpoints, I forget all of them. There's repetition, there's gesture as well. And of course, there is story in the original Mary Overleys. Anyway, it's not important where they began. But I think analyzing a script from the physical plane, a play script, it's very, very important. And this is where I find that there are less and less people, academic people who are doing that, because they study the page. They don't study the stage. And this dimension of storytelling, sometimes works, and maybe something is missing if you just read it on the page. And of course, there's analysis on the social plane, which all of you are wonderful, because probably your sociology teachers as well, because almost all the questions were about stuff on the social plane, but it doesn't, social relevance is only one aspect of studying play on the social plane. You're also looking at manners, because one of the repeated questions that came very often is, what is the relevance of this to today's society? If you look at gender discrimination in Tara, which I wrote in 1989, how relevant is it today in 2021? Wonderful question to ask. Right, but that is just one aspect of it, and I think I would rather leave it to academia and audiences to answer that question as to what is its relevance in 20 years or 30 years later. But we're also looking at manners. We're also looking at what is socially correct, social propriety. We're also looking at, because those define the storytelling. If you look at A Doll's House, right? And why is it that Doll's House in adaptations, Indian adaptations, still continues to be so relevant to Indian society? Because norms of early 20th century European cultures, such as Swedish, Norwegian culture, it somehow reflects our culture today, the kind of formality with which Nora receives her friend from the past, and even the man who is blackmailing her, who's also in status lower than them, and how she overcomes. So for Nora to walk out of her family and shut the door behind them, if you understand the social values, that is a big, big thing, as it is in Indian culture today, right? If you were to, I don't know, maybe it's just naive of me to think, but if you look at American culture today, you don't see very many productions of A Doll's House in America today, because, okay, the marriage isn't working. a woman can walk out, right? It is possible. There may be repercussions. Things are never easy, but the problems are a little different. And it was very interesting on Broadway about 5 years ago. I saw a sequel to A Doll's House written by, I think, a European playwright called Lucas Nath, or maybe American, but with a slightly Europeanish surname. And it is 20 years later, and it is Nora returning. The play begins with a knock on the door, which I thought was brilliant dramaturgy. It picks up exactly where the play left, the slamming of the door behind her. But she hasn't come back to her husband and her family. She wants a divorce because she has become a successful novelist and a feminist novelist. But the question still comes that she is still technically married to Torvald, although they separated. So she's actually come to beg him for a formal divorce. And I thought that was a brilliant sequel to A Doll's House. It's called A Doll's House Part 2. Aesthetic playing. Now, again, aesthetics, of course, you can look at everything as a part of aesthetics because there's beauty. In everything there is beauty in the poetics. That's part of the aesthetics. But you can also look at beauty, not in a limited sense of what is pleasing to the eye, but something that sort of uplifts the senses in some ways. That a set could be very, very stark and bare and very beautiful. You can have a very beautiful set of Waiting for Godot, which is almost like a post-apocalyptic landscape with a very bare, tree trunk as its major set. And yet you can, aesthetically make it very beautiful. In fact, the theories of Rasa say that ultimately beauty is the rasa you want your audiences to leave with, or bliss, ananda, because even if they watch something very tragic, they must leave with a sense of being rewarded, like having had a meal or a very tasty drink. And that's why you have the word rasa, which is so complex and so beautiful compared to audience or spectator. Because both audience and spectator are limited to one sensory experience, audience being the auditory one and spectator being, but when you say rasik or rasa, I think it's a little more holistic because it's an experience that, yes, you receive through the senses, but I think it connects your intellectual, emotional, and cultural expression completely. That is the true reward of the Rasik. Then, of course, you have the psychological plane. And I was very pleased when I learned from the workshop, the psychology that goes behind Kuriatim. I mean, it was a workshop, of course, I've only learned the ABC of it, but I'm also able, through 40 years of experience in the theater, I can connect it to what Kuriatim performances I've seen, is that he began with a very simple exercise. He said, look up, right, at the ceiling, and then look down at the floor, because so much of Kuriatim is Netra Abhinay. Then he said, look up, not at the ceiling, but at the sky, right? And then he said, look down, not at the floor, but as if you're looking down into a deep well, right? And then he added this, which was just literally sent my hair on end. He said, look up as if you're seeing the heavens, right? The celestial creatures in the cosmos, right? And look down as if you're looking down into the netherworld, right? Into the core of the earth, right? And I think this kind of psychophysical connection, which Western theater has become a master of, of course, thanks to Stanislavski and Meyerhold and Michael Chekhov and all those people who came from the Moscow Arts Theatre, and the people, the academics and the theatre practitioners who followed them, who understood that this is a breakthrough technique. And again, it's all there in our and of course I'm not an expert, but you are. I mean, that is why you are in the academics, and it's been wonderful for you to explore that and offer us insights into that through the scripts you read, because ultimately these theories, whether it's Stanislavski, whether it's Bharata, whether it's Abhinav Gupta, whether it's Chekhov, or all came from a study of performance, of writing for performance, and hence they were formulated. It's not the other way around, that someone sat in a cave or in a study table and came up with all these theories and said, okay, theater practitioners, you follow these, right? So again, this sort of exchange is very, very important, and I see less and less of it happening. That me as a practitioner, as an artist, you as an expert on so many things, of literature and hopefully drama, certainly sociology. I think it's very, very important that we do have this, this dialogue and this exchange through maybe smaller sort of seminars and things, because it's one thing sort of having the task of teaching a text in class. But I think at the same time, whether you instill it in your students or you pursue it yourself, I think the greater service, of course, teaching is a service by itself, and as we all know, a very noble one. But I think if we need to give contemporary Indian theatre any kind of identity, I think it's the academia who will be able to do that. So I think with that, I will just, there's some other questions which I thought were very interesting. And I'm sorry, I can't sort of address all of them, like I said. Another one is by Rennie Marshall from Kongunadu College. How do you build characters? Do you add layers as you go, or do they just sort of come? Again, in my workshops, I use the word plasticity quite a lot. And I think even flexibility can help, but plasticity is really the word. It's a relationship, right? It may sound a little romantic, but clearly it's not. That yes, you set off with characters and their objectives. You give them clear goals as to what they want and how they're going to go about getting it, and the obstacles they're going to meet. But every negotiation with an obstacle, sometimes the character rebels and says, I would like to do it this way. So you are actually listening to your creation as it is made. To sort of put it more on a brass tacks thing, I think a lot of my redrafting gives clarity to what my characters really want. And again, I'm of the firm believer that as a playwright, I think the absence of characterization can help you get to the truth. Again, I wish I had time to draw the difference between character and characterization, right? So characterization is a construct, which I think actors are very good at, and hopefully directors as well. But as a writer, I think it's so important to focus on the action and the outcome of it, and what is it that they truly and really want, that the contradictions actually help with the characterization. And the reason why I say that characterization can limit, because characterization comes with certain frames of references, certain judgments, and I think judgment is the enemy of creativity. That if you really want to be creative, you have to suspend judgment. because again, judgment is the polarity of analysis, isn't it? I mean, think of a scientist analyzing something to discover the truth, right? Now, you can't begin with saying, I know this, because what's going to happen is all your analysis, all you're doing is validating something that you presume you already know, right? But it's great when you discover something you didn't know, but you actually know. And I think to me, that is a process of discovering character through the writing. And then, of course, actors and directors use, and even academia use the reverse process is then you analyze the characters, the way they're written, and then come up with why did they do this and how did they do it and stuff. So I hope that answers your question. How do you, Anjali, student from BCU, how do you manage to deliver your plays to the audience in a hilarious manner? Now, again, I think that if you ask me about the aesthetics of today, is that we are crossing genres. My plays are, if you ask me what is the genre, I would say drama, because there are very clear conflicts and resolutions and character transformations and things as you would in the design of a drama. But at the same time, I love humor because I think humor offers greater insight, sometimes because it helps the audience laugh, right? Hopefully at themselves and not at other people. And I try to keep the humor a humor of embarrassment, because that's when you laugh as an audience, because you identify with the embarrassment. And in that, you relax. And in that state of relaxation, you're far more receptive. So I think I agree that humor is very important. How do I do it? I think it's best left for critics and for academic people to analyze it. And I hope you will once you come to your dissertation, when, if you're studying literature and drama, I'm sure at some point you would want to then, present your dissertation. So I must conclude with this because I have another meeting and they're calling, it's at 11:30. Thank you very much, Dr. Abraham, and I will let you have the last word on this, or anyone from your department. Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak. And I'm sorry I can't see all of you, so I can't, so much of my body language is to be restricted to the eye of the device I'm on and not through eye contact. And I miss that terribly, but this is better than nothing. Yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for taking time to explain on this, to making us travel through the different aspects and the different theories and the theories, and then answering on the questions, whatever is possible. Thank you so much for accommodation within this short limit. I now call upon Assistant Professor Sumati and faculty from the Department of English to propose the vote of thanks. We will be also sharing the feedback link here. It is not for certificate, just for feedback for our documentation purpose, not for anything else. Okay, so please do fill the feedback link, dear participants. And if you don't mind, kindly turn on the video so that we can have a virtual photo shoot as such for our documentation purpose. And thank you so much, sir. I call upon Sumatina. For that, we'll have the photo session.
Good morning, everyone. Sir, you said that you missed eye contact. I'm sure another thing that you missed is an applause. So I think I take this opportunity to call upon whoever can unmute themselves, or at least virtually, to just give out a round of applause to sir. Thank you so much. W.B. Yeats famously posed the question, how can we know the dancer from the dance? Today's session has given us a rare insight into both the dance and the dancer, both the artist and the art. Honorable Father Principal, Father Joshi Matthew, and all the fathers of the management, respected delegates from various institutions, beloved colleagues, and my dearest students. It was indeed great pleasure to have you all with us. I, Sumati Nagesh from the Department of English, take this moment to formally thank you all for partaking in this interaction with Mahesh Dattani, sir. Thank you so much. Sir, the humility and willingness you displayed each time we approached you and on so many occasions is truly a sign of your vast knowledge and wisdom. I represent everyone gathered here to express our deepest gratitude to you for being with all of us. I would definitely be justified in saying how much we are all fangirling or fanboying right now and hopefully trying to mask it under a professional garb. So thank you for that. I'm compelled to say thanks to all our guests today from whom we received an overwhelming response. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you for being here and giving us your really pertinent questions. That was really insightful as well. Without the efforts of the organizing team, this task would have been nearly impossible, especially Dr. Lilikoti Ibrahim ma'am, Professor Shanti Joseph, Dr. Akhila, along with the entire teaching fraternity at the English department, Christi Jayanti College. They have all really worked very hard to get this in motion. But sir, to be sharing this, space with you is still feeling like a dream, although they have made it a reality. I need to recognize the efforts of the tech team who ensured that we are all seen and heard properly. So I really appreciate, I know they're having a really busy day, but despite that, they have really taken up their time for us. In the end, dear students, it's really you who are the moving force of this program. I'm really sure you've gained so much more insight into sir's work and to the craft of playwriting itself. And thank you for your attention. Throughout these interactions, you have proved that drama is truly transformative and it transgresses beyond the stage and really beyond the page as well. So speaking with you and just listening to you has been an immense pleasure. Thank you all, and I end this gathering.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you once again, everyone who were part of this great event. I was sharing with my colleagues this morning when I studied Kara Vedite in UG. I never dreamt that I would be contacting the author himself and meeting you in person. It was a great opportunity, sir, and really humbled by the person that you are. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Abraham, for inviting me, and we will be in touch. I must beg your leave now because I have another.
Sure, sir. Sure, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye. Bye, sir.